Hey, welcome back to Recently Played, and today I'm going to give you my thoughts, feelings, and opinions on 12 by Ryuichi Sakamoto. Let's get into it. Because we don't know when we will die, we get to think of life as an inexhaustible well. Yet everything happens only a certain number of times, and a very small number, really. How many more times will you remember a certain afternoon of your childhood? Some afternoon that is so deeply a part of your being that you can't even conceive your life without it. Perhaps 4 or 5 times more, perhaps not even that. How many more times will you watch the full moon rise? Perhaps 20, and yet it all seems limitless. This passage, read by author Paul Bowles from his novel The Sheltering Sky, can be heard at the beginning of the song Full Moon on Ryuichi Sakamoto's 2017 album Async. I bring this up because this is perhaps the most direct example of a theme central to Sakamoto's recent work, exploring the fragile, temporary nature of our lives. That feeling of anxiety when you realize, when you're reminded that I am going to die. This concept of not existing anymore that is so difficult for us to comprehend is, in fact, the truth. For me, Ryuichi Sakamoto's haunting, dismal, yet beautiful album Async really captures that weird mix of feelings that come along with thinking about our mortality. The album was composed and recorded during Ryuichi Sakamoto's recovery from throat cancer treatment. An acclaimed composer and musician who, for decades, literally never stopped working, was suddenly brought to a halt and put face to face with his own mortality. And while the album is so haunting, sad, and evokes the feeling of anxiety surrounding death, I was quite surprised when I watched the accompanying documentary Coda. Sakamoto's process of making the album looked quite different than what I imagined. We see him getting bored of doing nothing while in recovery and then returning to making music because making music while you're sick is better than not making music at all. And we see him getting excited and playing with sounds, experimenting, and genuinely having fun creating. When you're watching it, it's hard to imagine that he was making such dark and dismal music. You get to see that for him, music is an outlet for these grim feelings. It's a way for him to productively manage these dark thoughts. And I think the biggest takeaway from the film is that as long as Sakamoto is breathing, as long as he's able to play an instrument or at least use a computer, he will be making music. It's just what he does. And so getting to his new album 12, I think when talking about this album, it's important to have understanding for the context of this era of Sakamoto's career. Because in many unfortunate ways, the creation of 12 closely mirrors the creation of Async in that, for the second time, he created an album while in recovery from cancer treatment. So ahead of the release of this album, Sakamoto released a statement describing that after coming home from a serious operation, he just wanted to be showered in sound. He had no intention of composing anything or making an album in the formal sense. He just wanted to make sound. And for me, this isn't particularly surprising to hear. I mean, this is the guy that got all giddy about recording glacial water because it's the most pure sound on Earth. And in my opinion, in much of Sakamoto's work, the concept is actually much more important than the final product. He loves brainstorming, innovating, coming up with a crazy idea, and then just seeing how it goes. And when you look back at his discography, you can see that to some extent, he's always been like that. So whether 12 was recorded with the intention of creating an album or not, which I'm pretty certain it wasn't, I would argue that it is still one of Sakamoto's most ambitious concept works to date. I think he makes his concept and his intention behind this release really clear with his decision to just leave these pieces as is, not even giving them song names, just only the dates of when they were recorded. In the press release for this album, Sakamoto stated that he wanted to leave these tracks without adornments. And I mean, come on, I love adornments. Adornments are great, but I think for this project, he really wanted to take us to that time and that feeling. Going back to that idea of wanting to be showered in sound, For the first half of this album, all of the tracks dated from March 2021 to February 2022. For the most part, all of those tracks sound like they were created with the intention of being this force of healing, this cleansing shower of sound. Now, personally, I'm fortunate to have only had minor experiences with operations in the hospital, but even then, I understand that there's this feeling of total stillness when you get home from the hospital. That you're putting your whole life on hold for reasons that no one can dispute. At the end of the day, it's your health. And that open, barren stillness is so well captured. It makes me think of lying on the couch in the middle of the day with the sun beaming through the curtains. It's a very specific kind of peace. I find that the ambient tracks on this album have a real human quality to them. There's the sound of Sakamoto's subtle breathing in the background. There are those beautiful piano flourishes that fade away, making you reflect on the fragility and impermanence of our lives. There's the tinge of that high-pitched tone, symbolizing the anxiety from anticipating your inevitable death. Ambient electronic might be a genre that one could argue is innately inhuman or robotic sounding, but I think that these songs and really all of my favorite ambient music reflect the human condition. But then in March 2022, something happens that changes the course of this album. We hear piano being played traditionally like a piano. As Sakamoto advances in his recovery, he's able to play and compose music in a more traditional sense. It feels like you're waking up from a dream. Like the first half of this album is this limbo between life and death kind of state where you're in this haze of suspended reality. And I thought it was cool how the album's sound and structure directly correlates with his real-life recovery from surgery. It's perhaps one of the most unique listening experiences you'll ever have. And you would think that after regaining the ability to play the piano again, you would hear something more joyous or celebratory, but it's really just the opposite. We hear these dark ruminations with a looming, ever-present sense of anxiety, like this impending end is upon us. And it makes you think that maybe death, dying, and being dead are actually quite peaceful things in comparison to being alive and thinking about death. This is why albums like this and other works of art centered around death are so vital for us. They give us a place for these feelings to go so that we can continue on living, enjoying the things that matter right up until the end. Exploring these places beyond our comprehension is something people have always done and will always continue to do. It's perhaps one of the most human practices there is. And this is a beautiful, incredibly human album. No rating for this one. I don't feel like it's totally appropriate, but this is a very interesting and unique album that I really do recommend. And there you have it. Those are my thoughts, feelings, and opinions on 12 by Ryuichi Sakamoto. I hope you enjoyed this video, and it always helps to give me a like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.